Hello, world. We are back. We are in it together again with the Dunlaps. I am your co-host, Deontay,
I'm Shakima.
and we are the Dunlaps.
Dunlaps.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you again for attending. Thank you for listening wherever you are. You could have been anywhere else, but you're here with us. Thank you for coming. All right, my love. How we want to start today's episode? What do we want to talk about today?
So I thought we'd start off today's episode and maybe all the future episodes by talking about something that happened in history. So one
Mm,
of my favorite things to do with my students is take a look at the equal justice initiatives today in history calendar. And so, I've been a fan of Dr. Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative for a long time. Most of you probably remember him from the movie Just Mercy with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. And so Just Mercy was a book written by Dr. Stevenson about his time in Alabama, I believe, helping a wrongfully convicted Black man be exonerated. And so the Equal Justice Initiative was kind of like formed in that process. And so to date, they have helped, hundreds of people who were wrongly convicted um, have their death row sentences vacated. And he's also behind the Civil Rights Museum. Well, not the Civil Rights Museum, but the Lynching Museum that's in Montgomery. And I keep wanting you to take me to it. So, like, can we? Can we?
we're going to make it happen. We're going to
Okay.
make it happen.
Because I know, like, sometimes when we're trying to get back to Atlanta, the timing, right? It's either
Yeah.
in the morning when we go through Montgomery, or it's super late at night when we go through Montgomery. But I do want to see it. And so today in history, November 29th, 1864, U.S. forces kill hundreds of indigenous people in Sand Creek Massacre. So,
Wow.
yeah. So on November 29th, 1864, American troops murdered more than 200 Cheyenne and Arapaho people who were living peacefully along Sand Creek in eastern Colorado. Days before the massacre, white officials had assured chiefs of the village that their community would not be harmed. At dawn on November 29th, hundreds of U.S. soldiers led by Colonel John Shivington surrounded the village. Residents responded by waving white flags and pleading for mercy. One of the chiefs raised the American flag in an attempt to demonstrate that he too was American. Ignoring these symbols of surrender and peace, the white troops opened fire with carbines and cannons, slaughtering more than 150 people. Most of the victims of the massacre were women, children, and the elderly and infirm. After the massacre, the troops burned the village, mutilated the bodies of the deceased, and removed body parts to keep as trophies. Sound familiar? Some scalps of the dead became props in plays that the troops later performed to celebrate, as one soldier boasted, almost an annihilation of the entire tribe. Violence against indigenous people in the U.S. had been overlooked and ignored for decades. Many white settlers in America cultivated a view that Native people were less human and worthy of dignity and respect than white people. This was evident in the historic violence and slaughter on display at Sand Creek. Officers tried to justify the massacre by asserting a false narrative that described indigenous people as less than human and dangerous, and claimed that the soldiers who committed the massacre had acted in self defense. This fabricated account was disputed by other American soldiers who witnessed the massacre and felt compelled to tell the truth. Hundreds of women and children were coming towards us and getting on their knees begging for mercy, described U.S. Captain Silas Soule in an 1865 letter to Congress, only to be shot and have their brains beat out by men professing to be civilized. So that is our Equal Justice Initiative today in history, the Sand Creek Massacre.
Wow. Oh man, reality is sometimes stranger than fiction and oftentimes even more brutal. That is that I was today years old when I learned that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's I mean, I can't even call that ice cold. That's just soulless. It's
yeah.
but when you I don't know, it's a challenging thing. It's like you when you have an organization move like that, when you have a group of people galvanized to do certain things, is that can't be do, especially, atrocities. There's no humanity in that.
No.
That is cold, calculated. Um, and it's sad. It's a true tragedy in history. And wow.
Yeah, and I think part of the even bigger tragedy is that we don't that most people don't know about it, right? So like this calendar, and I encourage you all to go and take a look at this calendar. The website for the Equal Justice Initiative is eji.org. And so to get to the calendar, you just put calendar.eji.org. Take a look at the whole Equal Justice Initiative site, their movement, what they're about. You can get involved, donate if you can. But the tragedy for me as an educator is that most of us have never heard of it. Like we've heard of like, Wounded Knee and Custer and stuff like that. And we knew, obviously that more Sand Creeks had to be, you know, they had to have happened in order for them to wipe out an entire nation or several nations of people. But for the chief to hold up the flag, right? Like to just try to say like I'm also American, and their own symbol didn't even mean anything to them, right? So like
Right,
this thing, you know, like they say that we're not patriotic if we don't stand for the national anthem or if we don't say the Pledge of Allegiance or if we don't salute the flag, but they don't salute the flag. It's like the chief tried to give them back what they honor, and it wasn't even, it's, I don't know if, how do you combat that?
right,
Like what is required of you in order to overcome that, and you just start to think like nothing, like there's nothing that you could actually do to stop that. Like
right.
what could you possibly bring to the table? What could you possibly say? Like if you spin this false narrative, they're less than human, and that the reason why these things that you're doing these things to them is because they are subhuman, but you don't treat your animals that way. You don't you don't treat your pets that way, right? So like that, even still, like that's not, it's not, the math ain't math. It's not. And so yeah, so we'll be doing one of these every Tuesday. And again, I encourage everybody to take a look at what Dr. Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative team are doing. um but this stuff is out there. Like in 2022, there's no excuse for anybody to not know, at least be trying to find out, what happened in history. Um, and not on, Al Gore's internet. We got all this information right at our fingertips. And so ignorance is no longer okay. It's not acceptable. And today I actually have on my shirt, my existence is political, because it is. And maybe I'll just keep it right there in the screen the whole time. Let's just
And,
do
the interesting thing about, war, which a lot of times gets glorified in pop culture, and a lot of our literature, a lot of our music, movies, we glorify things like war and battle and warriors, but we don't think about what actually happens out there on that battlefield.
that's
There's
it.
it's no holds barred, no rules. And it's anything goes, and we, sometimes it gets romanticized as we create these heroes who we tend to raise up. And I'm not saying that those who were tasked with being the soldiers on the battlefield wasn't given one story, just like the truth is coming out today.
Mhm.
And so it's not to point fingers at those who serve, but it's like when you think about the way the story gets spun, when you think about how people get exalted in these situations, and then when you start to hear the fine details of the brutality,
Mhm.
of the dehumanization of others on the battlefield, um, it's heart wrenching, because it's not all that glorious. It's not an honorable thing.
Yeah.
And to hide these behind symbolisms of honor and duty, to take another life,
Mhm.
much less, that's not even a warrior, not another enemy combatant, but
Correct.
someone
Citizens.
surrendering,
Mhm. Mhm.
um to to do brutal acts to someone who's surrendering, who has given up their dignity, for the sanctity of life, is you know is it really puts a really different spin on it. And I respect it because I have family who serve. We have family that serve. So there's no knock to those who serve this country and our greater principles and aims. But when you hear about things like this, it's like, wow. And it really opens your eyes, and in the sense that war should be the very, very last option
Right,
in any
right.
given situation, because violence begets violence,
Hmm.
and it creates a need to shed more, and it just and the bar gets raised, and it just gets more and more brutal as people as other humans get mutilated by other humans. There's always that factor of retaliation,
Hmm.
and it gets worse and worse. And one thing I have read in books is that you don't know the darkness of the human heart until you see it on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And that
And that's
is,
one of the things I
and when you
respect
read
about you so
stories like
much, babe, is
this,
that,
it exemplifies.
and again, that's one of the things that I respect about you so much is because you understand, your power. And so you wield it carefully, like you're very peaceful because you know how powerful you are. And so I think, when I hear you talk about the role of those who, protect and serve us, um, we there should be some kind of like rules of engagement about who you turn that fire on, like private citizens and people who are surrendering, women and children and elderly and infirm should not get the military against, you know what I mean? So like if you're going to war and there's some combat taking place or whatever, but I would just hope that there wouldn't be a day where the military would turn on me, as an individual citizen. And so I think you're right that part of being so powerful is to understand and to place parameters and boundaries around how you use it. There has to be some ethics surrounding it.
I agree. It's one thing, like you said, in the willpower is one thing to have, but it's something completely different in how you use it. And
Hmm.
I think that is the mark that shows that's a person's true character, or a group of people or organization's true character, is not that you have power, but how you wield that power. You know, virtue is spiritually useless, and it has no overall good for anyone other than those who benefit from that power. And you find, like I said, you find out the true character of those by how they use their power, particularly towards those who have much less power than them. And that's one thing I've learned, as a martial artist, is when you have years of experience and you get in there with someone who doesn't, it's you find out the character of a martial artist by how they treat that new person,
Wow.
how they care for that person. Do they go all out and just take complete advantage of that person who has no background or skill, or do they take the time to cultivate this new person who's trying to become a martial artist themselves? Do you care for that person when you're in there teaching them and sparring with them? And that's one of the things I learned early, because I've been in there with people who, when I was new, who took complete advantage of the fact that I was new, and they beat the brakes off of me.
Mm,
And I told myself that that's something that I wouldn't do, because it's demoralizing. It'll make you quit, But at the same time, when you look at it, it determines whether or not you're a fighter or not. So it depends. It's not that simple.
mhm.
Um, but so there are layers to it. If you're aiming to be a fighter, you should be put under that pressure. But if you're a novice and you just enjoy it, you just want to learn how to defend yourself, I don't think that those are the people you go all out on. I think everybody should be tested, but in a controlled environment. But again, you learn a lot about your power when you're put face to face with somebody who either has less than you or more than you. And I've had, some fighters who, male and female, who were leaps and bounds beyond me in skill set. Some took it easy on me and some did. But I learned the character of those in each one of those individuals, which is based on those interactions. Because you
Mm.
learn a lot from a person that punches you in the face. You do. And that's one thing I learned, is in the truth, in that chaos there is truth, and you find out your character and that person's character too. So the truth is in the heart of battle, as they say in Street Fighter.
I think that's so huge. And I was just thinking about even with like teaching, like that can be said about teaching as well, like how people treat the new people when they come in, like help them? Do you support them, or do you just, take the opportunity to be like the most brilliant person in the room and drag that person through the mud? That I think that's true in every profession. Like how you treat the new people is so important. It's just so important. So, yeah. So let me ask you a question because I wanted to kind of lighten it up a little bit.
Okay.
And you didn't know this was coming.
Hey, spontaneity is the spice of life, right?
What's the blackest thing you did this week? And the reason why I asked that question is I saw somebody interview Issa Rae again, not Lisa Ray, Lord have mercy, Issa Rae on the red carpet, and they said the last time we interviewed you, you said you were rooting for everybody black. Are you still rooting for everybody black? And she was like, yeah, I'm still rooting for everybody black. And I thought that's real black of you, like that was real black, Issa Rae. So Mr. Dunlap, what's the blackest thing you've done this week?
Everything I do is black. Even though I'm one of the bright skins, everything I do is black. There's no degrees to it. It sometimes it happens by accident, sometimes it happens on purpose. I have my questionable moments, but everything I do is black. So that's where I'll keep that one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I think asking you that question.
You put me on the spot, but
yeah, I think that might have been the blackest thing I've done. That might have been the blackest thing I've done all week. Just to yeah.
But I'm good on my toes though. I'm good on my toes. So it's all good.
So I'm going to turn it over to you. But today's episode is Remember the Time, right? So we're talking about like what is the value of time? Do you believe that it is an illusion? Do you believe that it's something to be capitalized on? Like, what does time mean to you? And I got this because I watched a Michael Jackson video earlier.
Oh man, time is the grand champion of all things. Nothing outlasts time. Time is more valuable than any piece of gold, any dollar you could ever make. Time is the one thing that you can never get back.
Wow.
No matter what you do, you can't make it up. And it's the one thing you can give to someone. That the only true value they can return to you is time.
Wow.
There's nothing that equates in value to time.
That's good.
It is I call it the grand champion of all things. Grand champion of all things, because it's in all things, it's only a matter of time. In all things. All things. I'll spin it back to martial arts. I trained 19 years before I had my first injury.
Yeah.
And this is, sparring hard. This is from fighting, training every day. But it was only a matter of time. Eventually, your craft is going to bite you back.
I felt that.
Eventually, your craft will bite you back. And so time is the one thing I value, and it's especially when another gives me their time. I always try to make good on the time that I'm given, that God gives me. And anytime someone takes their time to commit to something to help me, to enrich me, or just to spend with me, I value that so much, because I've had, at this point in my advancement as a human, I've had so many situations where people have wasted that time. And one of the things we talk about in business is the opportunity cost.
Yes.
What did it cost you that you could have been doing where you wasted this time? This wasted time was at the expense of what else productive could you have been doing? Who else could you have been spending that time with?
That's good, man.
So time is something that I value immensely, because you can, like I said, you can never get it back. The only way you get it back is if you start life over. And your only option is to start all the way at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's just the truth, that none of us can overlook. We're all, it's the one thing that beyond money, beauty, entertainment, it's the one thing that no one on the face, no thing. Let's extrapolate that. No thing on this plane of existence can supersede, can outlast, can overwrite, can rewind, can undo. It is the grand champion. It's time is the champion of champions.
Mm, I love that. And I think, you know, when you were talking about you know, our inability to get it back, I was thinking about, you know, the biblical principle of God redeeming the time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he can redeem it and he can restore the years. And it's like you never get that time back, right? Like you can have moments where you can be accelerated, you know, like where you can be kind of like catapulted forward based on, you know, what you learned in previous seasons. So, and I guess in that way, nothing is ever wasted. No time was truly ever wasted. But I do think there is in life like a wasted time tax. You know, like I think about moments where I didn't properly assess, you know, what Kairos moment I was in. And I mean like Kairos in the sense of like, you know, how we have Chronos, like that's a time on the clock, and then Kairos is like a season, like a moment, like this it's like a pivotal moment, right? A monumental moment in your life. And I don't think I adequately assessed all of the Kairos moments that I had. And so where I am today is, you know, a sum total of all the things that I did and the moments that I did capitalize on, but it's also a sum total of all the moments that I didn't, you know.
Yeah, and you know that's why one of my favorite acronyms is NEW, NEW, nothing ever wasted.
Mm,
Because I do believe in opportunity cost, but and I'll take a step back. I'll say I won't say that time is ever wasted because I agree with what you said. It's what you do with that time.
mm,
So say for instance, if you do, you do spend time with a particular person who, whether it was a business venture, conversation, whatever the case may be, there is something to get from that, even if it is to dial into the opportunity cost, even if it is to say, you know what, I could have been doing this instead of this, or I should have been doing this instead of this. And so it is the wisdom and experience you gain in those moments. So nothing is ever wasted, because if you have the right optics on it, if you have the right perspective, you can either dig into that moment and find jewels that you may be able to use later on in your experience, or again, you can address that opportunity cost. Like, you know what, in the future, if given the opportunity, I'm going to do this instead of this. I think this is a better use of my energy, my time.
yes.
Um, energy can be replenished. You could take a nap, go to sleep, have a nice meal, whatever the case may be. But again, although that energy, you may be recharged, rejuvenated, and renewed, that time is behind you.
Mm,
And one of my in my imagination, I dream of a day where we find out what time really is.
right. Because I do have my
You know,
something's just not right about what we've been told about it.
it's sometimes because some days it moves faster than others.
Hmm.
Some
Hmm.
days it just crawls by. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And they say it's because you're having fun or because you're bored. I think there's more to that science than we understand.
Hmm.
Because sometimes it's palpable.
That's true.
For example, this Sunday was, we talked about it, getting ready for the week, how slow Sunday went. And even though you were working on things for school, even me relaxing the day was long.
Hmm.
It felt like it was a really drawn out day. And some days we generally wake up at the same time, whether it's on the weekend or during the week. And some days it just blows
Right.
by.
Hmm.
It's like, wow, did we get anything done today? I felt like we've been busy, but I'm not sure, what we accomplished. Because the day went by so fast, so it's interesting. Time is a very, very interesting concept. And I wonder if where we are either physiologically, emotionally, if that has an impact on time. Um, so it's interesting, because I look at us as biological computers, and we learn things we never taught. We adapt to things without, it's like we have a programming to a degree. at least on like on a biochemical level. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. If it's a brain chemical thing, if it's a just a or physical chemical or just an entire body thing. It's interesting. Or it's a spiritual thing. You know,
Yeah,
maybe the spirit moves into a different field where it may not be affected by the parameters of time. And who knows? That's where and what if time is just a physical state.
mm,
It's interesting,
yeah,
and maybe it's just and maybe time we're confined to time in this form,
I
you
believe
know,
that.
you know.
I believe that. I really do. I mean, and I just think that, um, the more you start to read, some of the texts are a little esoteric or whatever, but the more you start to read, beyond the world was created in 7 days, right? Like what did those 7 days mean?
Mm.
Like once you start to like think about like how much we manipulate time by like, this is how much it's going to be in a day, right? And then we have daylight savings time. So we're going to take an hour back and we're going to put another hour in there. And then you have some states that don't even participate in that, so like what are their people doing when everybody else is doing this, and so when you think about it in those terms, it has to be something that's, that people can manipulate because they've already figured out how to do it, and so I do believe that this physical form that we're in has something to do with the way we experience time, but I don't think it binds time. I think
Mhm.
that our spiritual selves always supersede it. And so there may be some things that we need to be looking at. But what do you think? Let's do like some book studies or something, because I'd
Okay.
love to learn more about that. But I know you have some stuff you want to talk to us about tonight, and so I love to learn from you.
Oh yeah, and it's good that we talked about time because it's all relative.
Yeah.
Time is relative to everything, and I wanted to continue on to some of the concepts we talked about when we had Pastor Cox on last week, and
Okay.
one of the main topics for this that we were discussing was vision.
Mm,
And when you talk about vision in relation to time, we all have a vision. And one of the reasons why I think vision is important because it gives you an end state, an end goal, an end point, uh, a pinnacle, so to speak. Where would you like to be, or what would you like to see happen? And we all sometimes get wrapped up with the timetables of the when. I want it. Most of us, we live in a world where instant gratification is the thing, where we not only do we want it, but we want it like yesterday. And the thing about the vision is what keeps you going. And experience will, through experience, you learn that, vision isn't something that sometimes is clear in the beginning. Sometimes you have an idea of what you want, but the picture isn't quite the details in the picture haven't quite defined themselves. That's the word I'm looking for. Haven't quite defined themselves. And then you have some individuals who they're very direct. They have their vision so clear. But again, you have that factor of time.
yeah.
Some of us want the fast track to it. Some of us some of us are okay. And so I think that, vision, when you pair it with time, requires patience. So three things I want to talk about is vision,
Okay.
um, patience when you have a vision, because where patience comes in is in the middle part.
Mm,
Is where things may get muddy, where the vision becomes clear and that ambiguity sets in. If you're not quite sure which way is up, you're
yeah.
not quite sure if you're even on the right path to this vision. And it'll and through that ambiguity, it'll make you question your vision. Is this the right thing for me to be doing? Or is this just a detour? And some of us when we hit the deep, some of us get stuck on detours
Mm,
and make permanent detours. Some of us stop because we don't want to take the detour. We're like, either the detour we feel is either too hard or is either above or beneath us. So whatever the particular individual's perspective is, we all, when you have a vision and a goal that you're headed towards, we all hit that path of ambiguity where life and time sets in, and other responsibilities kick in, and sometimes poor decision making kicks in that may you know, either cause us to either modify the vision or abandon the vision,
Ooh.
or put the vision on hold, for a defined amount of time, or for a defined amount of time. And so, but again, that's where the patience comes in. Is the patience to allow things to work themselves out, the patience to work through your detour, and to understand that your vision is your goal. That's what you want to see. And if you're committed through your patience, so patience and your persistence to make that goal happen, to make that vision come to pass. And that what I, in my mind, in my experience, is what gets you to that vision, is when you understand that where you are may not have been your goal, it might not be your ultimate goal, but it's a detour to where you're ultimately trying to go. I'll give you, from my, just an example of my career. I started, in my current capacity, I started off at the juice bar.
Mm.
I was making smoothies. I mean, I'm in school. I'm an IT guy trying to, working to get my undergrad. And if you would have asked me, my vision was to be working at a tech job, was to either be working for a local phone company running cable, or being a, some type of network, some type of assistant, network associate, learning how to engineer and build networks. That's what I saw in my mind. And of course I knew I wanted to be successful, but that's not a vision. That's an idea.
Right.
Because success is an idea in and of itself. What does that mean? And until you again form a vision around what success is, it's a pretty blurry picture. And kind of digressing back to my story, I like I said, I worked in the juice bar, and I was looking for my opportunity. And lo and behold, just through persistence, just through being patient, waiting for my opportunity. That's one of my um I'm patient to a fault. I could be extremely patient, sometimes too patient. And but this was one of those situations where patience paid off for me. And working at a juice bar, my detour, I ended up, meeting somebody who was doing something that I was interested in. And I asked this person, hey, what are you doing? This looks fascinating what you're doing. And this particular person said, oh yeah, this is, I'm the in-house IT person. And I handle all of the systems, all the upgrades, all, PC deployments, you name it. If it's connected to something, I got it. If it's an IT related thing, that's mine. I was like, I want to do whatever you're doing. And this person said, you know what, you're in luck, because I'm going for a different job. So if you want this one, send me your resume. And that person had my resume later that day. And I did that for several years. And then I progressed to an even higher level technical role, where I was responsible for opening locations. And of course, in any organization, brick and mortar, you open up locations until you basically spend the budget. Like, all right, we've opened out, we're gonna open it for this year. And they basically told me, hey, you might have to, apply for something else. And so I spent some time, I took another detour. And I did some data work. I spent some time as a category analyst and learned a little bit more about the operations of the company I was working for. I learned a little bit more intricate details about different food products, different, things like because I started in like meat and seafood, doing some data analytics and learning about, cutting tests and yields, and, what do you, how a piece of meat starts and how it generally ends up, and how to price that.
Wow.
And what that means, when you cut a certain amount of the unsellable product off, how that changes not only the form of it, but it changed is how we sell it. And so I learned a lot about that, but again, it was a detour. It wasn't IT. It wasn't what I wanted to do. The only connection to IT was I was working on a computer. That was in Microsoft Excel. That was the really the IT part. But again, I did that for a while, and that was like one of my toughest. That tested my patience to an unbelievable degree, because I was there for about 8 years. And I got to a point where I questioned whether I was going to continue to move towards this, IT, centric world where I planned on building my career. And and there were times where times were tougher, when you're trying to, become, and you're trying to become in a space where you didn't anticipate being. So I'm in this detour trying to make the most of it. And again, you have all types of life going on, and bad decision making, and which also just kind of pushes you further into your detour because you get comfortable.
Yep.
And I never really allowed myself to get comfortable because I knew that this wasn't where I saw my career going. And one of the good and bad about being good at what you do is people want to keep
Mm.
you. And so and it's no fault of theirs. It's just it was they had as leaders of that particular team at the time, they had to do what was important for what they were responsible for, and I understand it as a leader now. um and so it wasn't that they were holding me in place. It was just they were looking to keep the team performing, and placing me somewhere else wasn't even close to being one of their priorities. And so again, patience, persistence, and I started to see, opportunity. As the IT support structure started to change, I started to see opportunity. Like, hey, there's going to be an opportunity here for this particular gig. So I started talking to people, and I told one particular person that we worked together for several years, that hey, when this opportunity comes, I want that gig. I want to apply for that. And I want to say a few years later, the opportunity came, and I applied for it, and I was able to get back into the world of IT. And I'll say that those years in that detour, they definitely had their benefit. There was some really dark moments where I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I think, am I going to abandon ship and try to build another vision, or am I going to stick to my guns? And I was persistent. And I worked through that ambiguity. And that's the thing, that's the tough thing about it, is sometimes it seems never ending. And again, time has no, it doesn't tell you, all right, you're going to be here for this long. No, time says, all right, you're going to be here for a minute. And
Right. Right.
what that minute is up to you. That minute is relative, to your experience. And, as they always say, God doesn't move you on until you get the lessons you need to learn where you are. And I guess that was the situation. But but working through that ambiguity, is the tough part when you get there and things don't quite look like what you thought it would.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. Like, this is not what I signed up for. So I'm either gonna just soak in this, or I'm gonna quit, or I'm gonna keep going. And
We've
I
all
so
been there.
yeah, I soaked for a little bit, but I kept going. That was one of the benefits of becoming a fighter, is I really learned how to dig deep, and when it gets tough, to dig deep and keep punching, just keep punching. And I kept working, and I kept trying, kept seeking opportunity. And when that opportunity came, I jumped on it. I jumped on it with passion and vigor, and I did where I could jump back into the tech world. And then I decided, then I started seeing leadership. I didn't want to become a leader, but again, that's that modification of your vision. It's like how, it's like when you get into a space where you complain, and why do we do this and why do we do that, and I'm not a complainer. If I'm in something that I don't like, I'm either going to get out of it, or I'm going to do what I can to fix it. And so instead of being a complainer, I decided I want to be a person that could affect real positive change. And so that's why I started reaching for leadership. And again, talking to the right people, seeing the opportunities coming. I saw an opportunity. I was like, they're gonna need a team leader for this. And I got myself prepared. And sometimes when opportunity meets preparation, you have what they call luck. And I was in the right place at the right time, in the group and around the right people. And I interviewed for one of my biggest promotions, and that's to become a leader. And again, and so now I'm in the tech world, as a leader in the tech world, with 2 advanced degrees. And I can look back, and I can look at my path and say, wow, the twists and the turns, the zig and the zag, the rest stops, the prolonged rest stops on
Hmm.
the path, and when it feels hopeless, and never give up hope. I know sometimes that can seem a bit, cliche at times, but it's real. It can seem pointless, but staying with it, staying patient, and continuing towards your vision for yourself, it pays dividends in the long run. But God isn't going to give you anything that you're not mature enough for, you're not ready for. And if it's really for you, it'll be for you. So, but I just wanted to spend some time talking about, things of that nature, because I know there, that in the world of instant gratification, when we see when most of us see the finished product online,
Yeah.
we don't see the development, we don't see the zig and the zag that a person had to take, or the failures that they had to endure, or the times where the door was closed in their face, and the opportunities that they weren't given. And so especially our young people who are super duper impressionable, who've grown up in the world of Amazon, where you can have something delivered to your door the same day, whether it's food, lotion, shampoo, video games, whatever. And so they just see the finished product. And so, being able to explain and, tell my story about, being, the zig and the zag, and the detours and the vision, and how the vision doesn't come together. It never comes together the way you expect it to. I won't say never. I won't use that word. I won't use talking absolutes, but relatively not often does it go the way that you plan.
Yeah.
And like they say, God laughs when you make plans. You know, but so what are your thoughts on, tell me a little bit about your, I saw you were, you testified a little bit on a few things I said. So, what are
Mm.
your thoughts on, vision, ambiguity and patience and persistence?
Well, I never wanted to become a teacher. And I
Mm,
always talk about how God forced my hand. I knew that I wanted to change the world. I knew that I wanted to work with young people, but I never wanted to be a teacher. And it's just that my life circumstances shaped up in such a way that I found myself being, needing to get out of a bad marriage. And I had 4 children, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Right. And I had an undergrad in English. I was not using it. I started my first nonprofit immediately out of undergrad. And I created a teen pregnancy prevention organization, and I was working with the Atlanta Housing Authority. So I was doing a free after school program for girls ages 12 to 18 in Grady Homes, and that it doesn't exist anymore, but obviously downtown by Grady Hospital. And so, I actually, no, I had my 3 boys when I started that. I didn't even have Messiah yet. So, like, I think it was when I got pregnant with her and I realized, okay, I got to do something different, right? I didn't expect for number 4 to be coming, but I knew that I needed to get out of that marriage. And that was, for me, I really just didn't know what I was going to do. But I thought if I could go back to school and become a teacher. There was an alternative certification program at Georgia State at the time, and it was a 1-year program. And I thought I could probably do that. I could probably do that. And so that is how I became a teacher. I just needed to be off when my children were off. I needed to have, I thought reasonable work hours. I never wanted to be a teacher, and that turned out to be one of the most amazing things I've ever done. And I've been doing it for 17 years. And one of the things that I've never been afraid to do is take a chance. Like that's just me. I'm like, let's try it. We can build it while we're flying. We can, like I don't have to see all the steps, because I know that as I'm on the path, I'm becoming the path, and I believe that all will be well. But I think that there are times when I've been ahead of God, where I've been, 2 or 3 years ahead of where I was supposed to be. Like, so that's the danger of being a visionary. Like, you get so far ahead, and then you think, I'm supposed to do that now, or I'm supposed to be the one to do it, as opposed to I'm supposed to be helping those who are going to do it. And so for me, that has been my biggest challenge, just having the patience to pause and say, every first of all, every good idea is not a God idea. That's the first thing. And that everything that I feel um inspired by, or everything that compels me to serve my community is not necessarily a part of my ultimate life vision. Maybe I'm just a small little, minute detail in that big picture of that story. Where I find myself now, though, is being middle aged and having adult children and being married to the love of my life and finally feeling some sense of peace and happiness on a personal level. you know um what next? you know like my profession is in upheaval, and I don't there are so many teachers who are exiting the profession, and I get it. This thing that I have spent 17, almost 18 years of my life now building. And I'm just like, what is this? Like, what has this morphed into while I was doing the work? You know? Um, and so that's the thing. Like now I have to find the courage to reinvent myself again. And it doesn't feel the same as it did when I was reinventing myself at 20 or 25 or even 30, you know? And so I know that there are people out there who are in the same predicament I'm in. You have done you've done everything for everybody else, and now you're just ready to just be. You want to have peace. You want to wake up every day not feeling rushed or pressured. You're tired of trying to make a miracle just to stay in a place or on a job or in a profession or whatever. And so now the biggest thing for me is having the courage to start over if necessary, but also having the courage to, we talked about it earlier, allow myself to be who I really am, allowing myself to grow
Right.
beyond, how I have seen myself. Because I know that there have been lots of opportunities over the 17 years that I've been teaching that I didn't capitalize on like I was supposed to. That those Kairos moments, that time, right? Like, but if I have a chance to do it again, like God, if you send it back around again, and this wisdom that I now have as a result of some of the mistakes that I made, some of the bad decisions that I made, like I'll make good on it. And so maybe now I'm ready for those things. Maybe the first time those opportunities came in my life, there was like a preview, like a precursor of what I could have, right? Like I was just able to see what is available to me in my life. And now maybe I'm just now becoming the woman who has the character to handle all those things well and to handle all those opportunities well. And so yeah, I guess we've been talking a lot about what to do in those moments. And you, part of what I heard from you is that you had the ability to say, I want that. And while I wait on it, I'm going to become the person who not necessarily deserves it, but the person who can handle it, right? And I think that's a part of the waiting process that a lot of people just don't get. It's that character development piece, right? So like while you're in the hallway waiting on the next door to open, what are the parts of you that need to be weeded out so that you can enter that next door well?
Agreed.
What a, like that's the part that most people skip over. They just think, well, it's just, I just need to wait till my moment. But like in the interim, what are you doing to become the kind of person who's going to be excellent on that level? Maybe you are excellent at this level, but that next level is going to require a different version of you. And so that is what you're doing while you're waiting. That's what you're doing while you're waiting. You're getting ready. So, you're staying ready. So you don't have to get ready. I tell my students that all the time, but it's that character development piece, constantly sharpening yourself, constantly honing those skills, constantly, becoming, if it's a leader, then you're working on, leadership traits and qualities. You're doing research on leadership. You're surrounding yourself with other leaders so that you can get the thinking part aligned with what leaders do. And that's the part that we don't like to talk about. You are doing something while you're waiting. You're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs. You're preparing yourself to walk through that next door and be excellent on that next level.
I wholeheartedly, I can't agree more. I don't even know what to even add to that. But you did say something that I did want to kind of hone in on, and I think a lot of us miss it because And it's difficult when you're in it to be outside of yourself. And one of the things that we hardly ever reflect on until is usually in retrospect is the trails that we create for others. It's the trails that we blaze, is when we step into a new space and we realize, like, what is this and why is this done this way? And you begin to bump up against that status quo. And what you don't know, and like I said, until you look back, is that based on your actions, even though you might have thought it was just for you, you open the door for everybody else that comes behind you, because no space will ever be the same.
Mm,
If you do it right, no space should ever be the same when you leave.
that's good.
And my goal, in any situation, is to make things better. In any situation I involve myself in, I come with the sole intent to make it better. If I can't make it better, I don't want to be a part of it. Again, because it's that opportunity cost. Where can I help things be better? And what I always try to do is, any space that I leave, or any space that I vacate, that the space is better, that the space was made better since I was there, and that I made something better for somebody else to take over or to come behind me. Because again, time, it's a cycle. You're not the first and you're not the last. And so you got to remember, if it's you, what would you, if it was you following somebody or coming in after somebody, what would you want to be left behind for you to pick up? And that was one of the greatest lessons I learned, even from my 8-year detour. I look back and I'm like, wow, although it was difficult, I helped make some things better here. I helped create some opportunities for other people. I help bring, I help raise the bar. I help build the standard. I help improve. I didn't just sit here. I didn't just waste my space. And so, and when I look back on that time, my detours, my zigging and my zagging, I always left somewhere. I always left a positive imprint. I always tried to leave something, not just a void, but if you want to call it a positive void, I thought, I'm in, and I hope that most places that I've, vacated from, people hated that I left more than they celebrated that I left,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be mourned, but I did want to leave a positive legacy behind, in any space that I occupy. And so my goal is to always make it better. And whether it's a little bit better or a lot of bit better, I always want to make it better. And that's my aim in anything I involve myself in.
I love
So
that. I love that so much. And so one of the last things I want to say to our listening audience before we close for tonight is to begin to think about, what is the next newest version of you, right? Like, what will you do next? What is your vision for the next season? Whether it's purchasing a new home or a new vehicle or getting out of a bad relationship or just looking for a new church home or looking for a new school to enroll in. What is it that you want to accomplish in this next season, right? And so once you begin to think about what your vision is for your next, begin to cultivate the characteristics of the people who do well in that space, right? So if you want to be a homeowner, what does home ownership require of you? It's more than just, getting the homeowner's insurance and going to closing. It's more than that. What is home ownership require of you? If you want to be an entrepreneur, what does entrepreneurship require of you? And do you know any other entrepreneurs? How can you surround yourself with people who are doing the work that you're doing? So begin to think about, what's required of you on the next level and start to cultivate the practices that people who are good on that level, be like them and do the things that they do. It's going to require some reading. It's going to require some podcasts. It's going to require watching some YouTube videos. But whatever it is, it's time to start preparing yourself to become that person. And when you are ready for it, the opportunity will show up. It's going to manifest when you are ready for it. Because the last thing you want to happen is for doors and opportunities to open that your character can't keep you in that place. That's the last thing you want to happen, for great things to happen, but your character to cause you to lose them. Okay. So that is my teacher moment for tonight. Mr. Dunlap, you want to close us out?
yes. Thank you, everybody, for giving us this opportunity to speak about some of the things that matter to us and that's been on our mind, and that allowing us to share this intimate conversation with you all. We hope that it enriches you. We hope that is we hope you got some chuckles, and we hope you learn from it. We hope that you were better from receiving this message. We thank y'all for your time as usual. You're in it with the Dunlaps. I'm Deontay.
I'm Shakima.
We're the Dunlaps.
We're the Dunlaps, and we'll see you here, same bat channel, same bat time, next Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time here on Facebook Live.
Yes, indeed.
Catch our podcast on Spotify. We'll see y'all later.
Thanks, everybody. Peace, y'all.